I'd like to show you another game from the Cairns Cup tournament in St. Louis, this women's tournament that finished quite recently. And this features a beautiful finish of quite a rare kind, actually, so just watch out for that. By the way, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, then do click on the subscribe button. It's free to subscribe, and click on the bell for instant notifications for when we post a new video. So on with this game, played between Jansaya Abdumalik, 19 years old, and she's a real prospect for the future. And she was playing against Alexandra Kosteniuk here with black, who is a former women's world champion and a mainstay of the Russian women's team. Very strong player indeed, and she came second in the tournament. So let's see what happened. Abdumalik with the white pieces, and it's a Spanish. Classical chess at its best. I'm a big fan of the Spanish with white anyway. So all normal so far. And now Kosteniuk plays a little bit of a sideline, but it has quite a decent reputation and, well, obviously very active, putting the bishop on this diagonal instead of the usual e7. And Abdumalik reacts in the best way, which is to put this pawn on d4 and gain time by pushing this bishop back. And then bishop e3, so that's fine. Aims to counteract this bishop on b6. And brings the knight out, all fine so far. And now I'm not that keen on Abdumalik's next move, actually. Rook e1. I think the normal move here, h3, just to guard against the knight coming to g4. Rook e1, of course, is the move we want to play, but it allows knight g4, and white isn't worse here. But I just don't feel comfortable giving up that bishop, basically. Knight f1 played. So that at least after this exchange will bring white's knight to a nice position. So Kosteniuk gives up the center, but it allows this knight to get some nice activity and, yeah, hitting out at this important pawn on d4. So Abdumalik kind of clears things up by forcing this trade on e3. But after this, well, you can see that white really is feeling the absence of this dark squared bishop. And knight c4. So black has sufficient counterplay here. And here, I mean, I think the best continuation for white is simply to recapture the pawn on d4. I think this would lead to a draw fairly rapidly, actually. So black can keep an extra pawn for the time being like this, but actually white's pieces are so active that I think basically all the pawns are going to be liquidated on the queen side, and we're going to end up in a draw. But Abdumalik wants more. b3 pushes this knight away. Now there's tactic. I mean, maybe perhaps she only now realised that if knight takes d4, then black has a nice tactic in bishop takes pawn here. And if that's taken, then queen takes knight. And, well, black is basically just a pawn up here. Obviously, if queen takes queen, then there's a knight fork here. And black is a safe pawn up. So that's the problem. So coming back to this position, Abdumalik has to basically wait for the time being, and she just plays rook c1. So black is a pawn up here. Now, it's not the best pawn in the world, but still, you know, black is fine here. Now I'm surprised that Kosteniuk didn't just play bishop d7 here. She plays b4. Bishop d7 with the idea of just rook c8 looks reasonable to me, but she goes b4 and a5, which could be useful later on, but anyway. And now Abdumalik decides to kind of clear the situation. She could play knight h4 and start fishing around on the king side, but she decides to take on d4, allowing this tactic again with bishop h3. But she's prepared this move, knight c6, that's her idea. So it opens up the d file for the queen. This was taken and queen takes. So just for the moment, white is a piece down, but she's going to get that piece back, because this is threatened and this is threatened. Looks a little bit awkward to put the rook up here, but we're going to see that well, black is active enough in this position. So material is now level, but now black has a lot of activity with the knight coming into this fantastic d4 square. And of course, white's king is potentially in a little bit of trouble here. You can see without the g-pawn it's exposed. This rook could potentially come over to g6. Now Abdumalik stops that with e5, because that opens up this bishop's diagonal. But now it gets very tactical. So knight e2 check threatened. That's the obvious tactic in the position. Here I think the best is for white to play the queen to e3, and it's perhaps not so bad for white. But rook c4 played, which is, well, seems reasonable to shut out the queen from e2 and in that way prevent knight e2 check. But Kosteniuk exploits the weaknesses of this move very well, and dare I say, it's one of my favourite themes in chess. The rooks are now split, and that can cause problems. I know black's rooks are split as well, but in this case for white it's a problem. So watch what happens. Queen d5, and this is very awkward to meet. So there are a couple of threats here. The obvious one, knight f3, forking king and rook. But the other threat in this position is to play knight e2 check, forking king and queen, and if rook takes, then queen d1 will win the rook on e2. So you can see how that exploits the fact that these rooks aren't working together. If that rook were on c1, it wouldn't be a problem. Let me see. Queen g2 played. This is now rather awkward. And now we're heading for a very attractive finish. Knight f3 check, king h1. Now, take care. Black shouldn't take the rook because of this, and then rook c8. And mate next move, the h7 square is covered. So queen takes pawn. So now it's starting to get very tricky. Now that can't be taken because we have a rook check and, well, mate very soon. So this is tricky, and obviously queen takes knight, we have queen takes rook. So there are problems for white here. This rook moves to c1. So now it's getting tricky, very tricky. Queen takes knight threatened. This is threatened. Queen e2 supports the knight and threatens rook d1 check. So Abdumalik prevented that with rook c8. And the rook came over to defend this one. That was taken. And now Queen F1. She's begging to go into an endgame, but no, Kosteniuk is having none of it. Queen E5, threatening mate. And you can see that white's options are running out here. Threatening the knight, so that's covered with Queen F4, and at the same time threatens the rook. Now that rook can't leave the first rank because of rook D1 check, so it slides to the side, and then rook D2. Black is closing in, and you can see that white is really running short of moves here. Rook G1 played, threatening a mate. Easy to deal with. G5. Yeah, let me just go back a moment. You don't want to play knight takes rook here because of queen check and same problem as before, problems on the back rank. But G5 just keeps that beautiful knight on F3 and gives the king a nice escape square on G7. So now knight takes rook is threatened, so the rook moves aside. And king G7 was the final move of the game, and this position is Zugzwang. It's rare that you get a Zugzwang in a kind of an open game like this, but white has no decent move in this position. If, for example, Queen G3, then we can exchange and give mate on H2. What else? We've got, well, if the rook goes here or here, then knight takes rook. If rook C1, we play rook takes pawn, because now the queen can hit the rook. So here, and this is easy. Check, and we take the bishop. Easy win with an extra bishop. So white has no decent moves here, and of course if the queen comes up, then queen h2 is mate. And that is basically that. So that's why in this position Abdumalik resigned. I should also mention that this bishop has no decent square to go to on this diagonal. I'm afraid all of those squares are covered. So beautiful finish by Alexandra Kosteniuk, who I think showed real class in finishing that game very nicely there. If you want to check out more games, then do check out the playlists in the info tab above. And as I said before, thank you for all your suggestions for games by other women, and I hope to have a look at some of those in the future. Thanks for watching.